Hi everyone, my name is Amber and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 13 books that I read in May, as well as the 3 other books that I'm currently in the middle of because I didn't have enough time in May. Things that kind of got to me, and for the last week of the month I didn't really read anything because May was kind of a shit show. Basically 2020 needs to be cancelled. Before I continue, I do want to say that I will leave some links below for those of you who want to learn more about the George Floyd and the protest situation that's going on in the USA right now. I don't think I can do a proper job summarising it, so check out the links below if you want to know more and if you want to know where you can donate. A couple of booktubers in our community have been directly affected by this and are taking part in the protests, which I think is amazing, and I'll leave links below if you want to show them some support. So the 13 books that I read, I think I'm going to go from worst to best this month, which isn't something that I normally do. I like to do it on occasion just because I don't want to end this video on a low note. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm just going to get it out there. One of the first books that I read in May was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. That's a really tricky title for me to try to say. I did a full reading vlog and review on this one, which basically explains my thoughts. I gave it 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it. I felt it was unnecessary. I didn't really see the point in Suzanne Collins writing it. What it's about is it takes place before, during and after the 10th Hunger Games, back when the games really weren't as established as they were in the original Hunger Games trilogy. It's told from the viewpoint of President Snow, as he is a mentor during the games. He has to mentor a District 12 girl called Lucy Gray, and my issue with this one was that I don't think it should have been told from President Snow's point of view. He was a really difficult character to connect with, and I really didn't see the point of sharing his story when he didn't really change much from the beginning of the book to the end to the original trilogy. He's just constantly been an arsehole, so I really didn't see the point. I think it would have been better if it had been told from Lucy Gray's point of view, or at least someone else's point of view, and then have President Snow be a prominent character, but instead we were inside his head for the entire thing and we saw him be a dick, basically. So I didn't enjoy it. 2 stars for that one. Speaking of books that I didn't enjoy and also did a reading vlog for, I read Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. This is YA fantasy. It's about 2 girls whose names I've forgotten, Sapphire and Isolde. They're witches. Sapphire is a truth witch, which is apparently a really sought after type of witch because they can detect lies, except it wasn't really that relevant to the story. I did a full reading vlog / review on this book. I gave it 2 stars. I thought that the writing was very jumbled and jumpy. The characters were being forced from one place to the next without really giving the reader time to connect to them. The world building was a bit shoddy, and I really think the only saving grace for this one was the friendship between the 2 main characters. They were really good friends and it was really nice to read about, but all of the characters sounded the same, so I didn't really like it. I gave a couple of books 2.5 stars because I couldn't really decide whether they were worth 2 or 3. The first one is The Prison Doctor, which is non-fiction. It's basically a memoir about a doctor who works in a UK prison. So the doctor originally was from Buckinghamshire, which is where I was from, and she started off as a GP and then she got involved in the prison system, and she was a GP in various prisons within the UK, and she was basically talking about her story. I didn't really see the point of the book. Again, this seems to be an issue with me. If I don't see the point in the book, then I'm not going to connect with it. The doctor spent a lot of time talking about herself and how she got along really well with the prisoners and how they all loved her, which I don't know was meant to was it meant to humanize the prisoners and show that they could be good people as well who just made mistakes? I think for a couple of the prisoners she did tell their stories and she did show that their mistakes weren't all of them, but other than that I didn't really see the point of the book, and it wasn't written very well either. I think it could have done with some more editing and some more, I guess, bulking out, because it just wasn't that great. The next one I gave 2.5 stars was one that I was really excited for. I buddy read it with my friend Kayla. That is A Spark of White Fire. This is YA sci-fi / fantasy, and it's about a main character who takes part in a competition in order to win a warship, and she's also descended from royalty. I've honestly forgotten what most of this is about. She's descended from royalty. Her uncle, I think, has stolen a throne. She wants to help her brother or cousin get the throne back or something. I found this one quite boring. The competition was over within the first chapter, and that's what I thought this book was going to be about. So that was disappointing because that's what I went into this book thinking it was about. And then the action wasn't that exciting to me. It's a very short book. It was really quick, but I just thought ultimately it was quite boring. I also didn't really like the way the author described a couple of things. For example, the uncle who has taken the throne is blind. He's a blind king. The author was describing him in scenes. I guess the author used like seeing people's language. I don't know if that's the correct term. I'm really sorry if it's not. I looked it up and the internet says to use the terms seeing people and sighted people. So for example, one thing that I texted Kayla was, can't remember if this is a direct quote or not, I should have highlighted it. It says, "The Queen insists on seeing me to my suite of rooms, except the Queen is blindfolded in solidarity with her blind husband, and the King doesn't see it this way, except the King is blind." So I don't know, that just really stood out to me because the author made a big deal of the King and his wife being blind or intentionally blind, so that felt a little bit weird to me. I don't really feel like it's my place to say that it was definitely ableist, but it just felt a bit weird. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. I'm really disappointed. I don't really understand the hype because everyone loves this book in this series, but I really didn't like it that much. And then we've got a few 3-star books. 2 of them were ones that I read for my debut author challenge that I'm kind of doing. I like to promote debut authors, especially during this time of crisis. So I read 2 debuts this month, I think. Yes, 2 2020 debuts. I gave them both 3 stars. The first one is The Lucky Ones by Liz Lawson. This one is YA contemporary. It's about a main character who survived a school shooting. She unfortunately lost her twin brother, so she's dealing with the survivor's guilt and the grief of losing her twin. And the other main character, who also is a point of view character, is called Zach. His mother is a lawyer and she's representing the school shooter. He doesn't agree with his mother's actions. His friends also question them and most of them leave him. It's quite hard-hitting contemporary. It was quite difficult to read in terms of the content, but it was very, very well written and I did really enjoy it. I just don't think it's one that's going to stick with me for very long, so that's why I only gave it 3 stars. It wasn't going to be an all-time favourite or anything, but I did really enjoy it. The next one is The Perfect Escape, which I also gave 3 stars. This one is about 2 teenagers and they both work at a zombie escape room together. They enter into a survivalist competition in order to win $50,000 and they have to team up and survive until the end in order to get the money. The female main character is dealing with her grief because she has lost her mum and her father is basically absent from her life, except he's still trying to control it. And the male main character is dealing with going to an elite school while also coming from a poor family. He kind of wants to excel in life, but it's difficult for him because his family don't have as much money and his schoolmates will know that he's there on a scholarship, so that's not great. I really enjoyed this one. It was very fast paced. It was quite a short read and I didn't really feel that connected to the main characters, but I did like their ship. I thought that was really cute. I could relate to a lot of what the guy was going through because I also went to a really posh grammar school when I was in high school. I'm from quite a poor family, so there was a lot of disconnect there for me, so I could relate to that part. I also gave 3 stars to The Family Upstairs, which is an adult thriller, although it's not really a thriller, it's more of a suspense mystery, I would say. I admittedly did not read the blurb for this one. It's quite difficult for me to describe, but basically a baby is left in a London house in Chelsea and in the kitchen there are 3 decomposing corpses, and then it flashes forward and the main character is the baby. She is adopted. She finds out that her family have left her this Chelsea home and so she kind of wants to figure out what happened there, and then we also follow a few other characters. Basically it felt a bit convoluted. I didn't really love the story. It turned into a sort of cult thing that I wasn't really expecting, but maybe I should have been, and it wasn't really about the creepy family upstairs at all, which is what got to me because that's what I thought it was going to be about, but it wasn't. So I only gave this 3 stars. It's not going to be a thriller that sticks with me. It was really easy to read, but it was also a bit confusing and a bit average. Apparently this author writes a lot of kind of cultish stuff, so that's interesting that she's kind of got a brand. I also read another thriller and that is Don't Tell Teacher by Susie K. Quinn, and I did actually really enjoy this one. I wasn't expecting to love it and I can't say I did love it because I only gave it 3 stars, but it was definitely enjoyable and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So it's about a woman who sends her son to a new school, which is a very kind of elite school. It's very, places there are very sought after. She's broken up with her husband who's abusive, and then things at school start going weird. So the son comes back with pinpricks on his arm, bruises, and it seems as though he's being bullied, but he insists that he isn't and he refuses to talk about what's going on at school, so it seems really dodgy. I did really enjoy this book. There were twists and turns. I don't really want to say too much about it because it's a thriller and it's really easy to give things away, so I'm going to stay quite quiet on it, but it was really fast paced, really enjoyable. I didn't really see the twist coming, although there were hints to it, so I picked up on little bits of it, and I think if you're a big thriller reader then you're going to figure out what happens, but it was still written really well nonetheless. So 3 stars for this one. And then I read I Am Thunder, which is YA contemporary about a Muslim teenager who's living in the UK and she joins a new school and she's having to deal with a lot of Islamophobia, and then she gets involved with a Muslim boy who has some dark secrets. Again, this is a very short book. It was really easy to fly through. I gave this one 3 stars. It was really enjoyable and it kind of shed some light on the Muslim experience in the UK. It's written by a Muslim author, although he is male, so it's almost own voices. I thought it was really enjoyable and I would highly recommend picking up if you want some hard-hitting YA contemporary. The only 4-star book that I read in May was One by One by Ruth Ware. This is an advanced reader's copy. It comes out in October or November this year, so I haven't done a review of it yet, but I will be recording one soon. I was hoping to record it today, but to be honest I'm feeling kind of numb, so I don't really want to do that. I will record one and post one a bit closer to the deadline though. Release date rather, there isn't really a deadline. This is an adult thriller, as are all of her books. It's about a woman who works at a chalet in France. There's also a corporate retreat happening in her chalet. She's kind of the hostess there. In a very Agatha Christie manner, people start to die. It was really enjoyable. I loved it. I gave it, like I said, 4 stars. I don't think it's quite as strong as The Turn of the Key, which is my favourite book of Ruth Ware's. I have done a whole video reading vlog where I decide which of Ruth Ware's books are my favourites after reading all of them in basically one go, so I will leave a link to that up above and down below if you want to go and check it out. It's one of my favourite videos that I've done, so it would mean a lot to me if you did go and check it out. There aren't any spoilers in it. So with this one by one, I would say that it's kind of up there with The Turn of the Key and The Death of Mrs. Westaway. It's really well written. I really enjoy Ruth Ware's books and they're really suspenseful, and this one was kind of action-packed and it did feel very Agatha Christie to me. So I would highly recommend picking this one up. Again, stay tuned for my review. Do subscribe so that pops up in your subscription feed at some point. And then I read 3 5-star books, which is unheard of for me because I never give books 5 stars, but I did because I reread one book which I adored, and then I read 2 sequels that I was highly anticipating. So the reread for me, which isn't going to be a shock to anyone, is The Kingdom of Copper. This is the sequel to The City of Brass. It's adult fantasy inspired by Middle Eastern mythology about jinn and devas and all of that good stuff. I'm not going to talk about this one too much, but I gave it 5 stars. I loved it upon a reread, and I'm so glad that I reread it because then I read The Empire of Gold. It's an advanced reader's copy. This is coming out in June. I can't remember the exact dates. I think in the UK it's coming out on the 11th. I know that, but in the US I think it's probably the 9th. I love this book. I did a full review on it. I'll leave a link up above and down below. This series is absolutely incredible. It ended in an amazing way. It was flawless. I loved it so much and I can't wait to reread it, probably next year at this point, but I will be rereading it very soon. And then for the final book that I read and actually finished, I read The Dragon Republic finally, which took me long enough. I read The Poppy War last year in August, I think. I had been meaning to get around to this almost right away, but I didn't because it scared me. It's a brick of a book. It's fantastic. I loved it. I did come across a couple of issues upon rereading The Poppy War and reading this one, in that I do think that the female representation in these books isn't that great. I am holding off in case it gets better in The Burning God, because I do think that the main character has some issues with the authoritative female figures in her life. Her lack of female friendships could be explained by that, so I'm just waiting to see how R.F. Kuang tackles that in the 3rd book. So that's my main issue with this one, is that she doesn't get into any decent relationships with women, and all of her close relationships and people she looks up to are men, so that's not great. But aside from that, it's an incredible fantasy series so far. I can't wait for the third book to come out. It's very dark and disturbing. There's a moment in this book that actually made me put the book down and kind of gasp and turn to my boyfriend and was like, what the fuck is happening? I don't normally get that disturbed by books. I dealt with chapter 21 of The Poppy War, which is the infamous one that everyone talks about, quite well. I think I handled it. I'm not going to say that I didn't mind it that much, but it didn't get to me. This moment in here really shocked me, and if anyone wants to know what that is, I'm talking about the dumplings. It just, yeah, it got to me. So I would highly recommend checking out the series. Can't wait for the 3rd book to come out in October, I think it is. It's going to be amazing. I just know it. And then, like I said, I'm in the middle of 3 other books. I'm recording this before the end of the month, so I'm hoping that I'm going to finish at least one of these by the time the month is over, but we'll see. I will mention them again in my June wrap up, I guess, because I wouldn't have given my full thoughts in this one. The first one is The Bone Witch, which I'm buddy reading with a friend. I don't really know how to describe this one. Basically it's about a young girl who is a bone witch, which means that she's a necromancer. She can raise the dead, and she raises her brother, and she is taken in by another bone witch and trained up. And I'm not very far through this one. I'm only, as of recording this, about 50 pages in. I don't really have much to say about it, although I will say that out of the 2 Ringe Pecco books that I've tried to read, this one is definitely the most captivating. I tried to pick up The Never Tilting World and I couldn't get into it, so I'm giving it some time before I pick that up. So I'm wondering if it's the book rather than the writing style of the author, so I am quite into this one. I'm looking forward to finishing it off, hopefully today. And then I'm also in the middle of Empire of Sand, which is adult fantasy. It's inspired by medieval India and Indian mythology. This one is also about devas. I think most of the books that I read in May are about devas, which is hilarious. I'm not very far through this one. I just couldn't get into it, and I started reading it last thing before I went to bed a couple of days ago. That was a mistake. I need to read this one in the daylight because otherwise I will be too tired to get into it properly. It's about a girl called Mare who is trapped between two cultures. Her father comes from the ruling class, but her mother's people are outcasts, and in the beginning of the book she is being bullied or looked down upon by her stepmother, and I think there's going to be vengeance in this book and rebellion, maybe. I know that there's a sequel that's already out, and I don't know if it's a direct sequel or if it's kind of a spin-off, but we'll see. I'm really excited for this one, especially because S.A. Chakraborty, the author of The City of Brass, blurbed this and really enjoyed it, and it's about Davis, so it's definitely something that I want to read. So those are the 13 books plus 3 that I have read or am currently reading. Let me know if you've read any of these in the comments below. Do subscribe because I post new videos at least 3 times a week, which is exciting and a lot of work. So if you were to subscribe or at least like this video, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you all in my next video. Bye.